Hi, everybody. Today we're going to discuss how you decide where to apply to medical school. And we're also going to discuss the AAMC database, which is the med school admissions requirement, which is a good database for you to use as a pre-medical student. So I hope we can have an exciting discussion about this topic because it's very important. People are always wondering, how do you get into medical school? Well, there's a lot that goes into getting into medical school, but it's hard to get in if you really don't pick the right medical schools to apply to. If you're on live and you're watching, give a thumbs up or write a comment. Let me know where you're watching from and let me know what school you attend. That way we can have some participation. I see Jake is on. Hi, Jake. Looks like somebody else may be viewing and ready to discuss how you get into medical school. The AAMC, which deals with medical colleges around the United States, the AMCAS application, which is used for people to apply to medical school, is now open. You can choose as many schools as you want to apply to. Obviously, each school comes with a cost. And so now that that application process is open, it's really important that students decide where they want to apply and try to choose wisely, because you don't want to apply to schools and basically waste your money. You not only don't want to waste your money, but there will be secondary applications that come after you finish the first primary AMCAS application. And to fill out those secondary applications, those also cost money. So applying to medical school can be a very expensive venture, and you want to make sure you're really applying to the right schools. So if you're watching, before we kind of get more into the content, let me know where you're watching from and what school you attend, and we'll get ready to get started. It's nice to know who the audience is, if we have any pre-med students on yet. Oh, hey, Matt. Thanks for joining us. Are you in Baton Rouge for the summer? You have a little ways to go before you apply, but all this information is really good to hear. Plus, the sooner you hear it, really the better, which is nice. I'm Dr. Tyson. I am a practicing transplant hepatologist here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I'm also the program director for the medical school, for the med school admit program. Hey there, Brianna. Thanks for joining. Another sophomore from LSU. Great. Hopefully we'll be working with you more next year. I'm looking forward to that. We have a lot planned, a lot of exciting things. Okay, you're in New Orleans. I'm from New Orleans originally. Actually worked in New Orleans today. So as I said, I'm a practicing transplant hepatologist, but my passion and my goal is to really help pre-meds become competitive medical school applicants and really see their goals realized of getting into medical school. And now that the AMCAS application is open, along with the discount that the AAMC is giving on the med school admissions requirement, I thought this would be a good time to talk about how do you choose a med school. And that's why on the flyer that I sent out about our talk for tonight, the 20% on there is the fact that there's a 20% off discount on the AAMC resource med school admissions requirement, and we'll look through that as part of this live chat. So the first thing I just want to say is that picking med schools is variable. So people use different criteria. I don't know what you've heard out there in terms of how people decide where they want to go to med school. Matt or Brianna, how do you think people pick? I know a big way in Louisiana how people pick, but let me know what you've heard in terms of how people decide where they're going to want to go, or where do each of you want to go to medical school? There's so many out there, it can be hard to kind of figure out how you narrow them down. So people do have certain ways they decide to choose. You both are at LSU, so I'm assuming since your undergrad institution is tied to a medical school, you'll probably at least be applying to LSU. Are there any other schools that you've thought about applying to or considered? We'll see what responses they have. Most people will pick based on location. So obviously, if you're at an undergrad institution, it certainly makes sense for networking perspective. And obviously, a lot of medical schools want to take students from their own institution. So it certainly would make sense if you're at LSU to apply to LSU, both New Orleans and Shreveport. For people at other schools, it makes sense to apply to the medical schools, certainly in your state. States like Texas are often very favorable to their in-state residents. So that's something important to be aware of. People apply to medical schools based on reputation, medical schools they've heard about or that someone else goes to. And those are really the common ways I think that people really apply to medical school. But the problem is those aren't always the best ways to apply and to increase your chance of really getting in. And so that's why in this talk, I really want to challenge people to think more broadly about how you apply to medical schools, because choosing the right medical school you apply to could be the difference between whether you get in or don't get in. And I equate it to dating. So if you're dating somebody, when you date, you really want to make sure you date someone that has very similar kind of values that you have. And so that's very important. And so in order to know that, you have to kind of talk to the person, know the person that you want to date. The person has to get to know you, and there really has to be a match there. And it's the same way with medical school. When you're picking a medical school to apply to, you want to make sure you know the mission of the medical school, what the medical school is really about, and you want to make sure that those missions and values really align with your own mission and values. Because if it's not a fit, then admissions committees who are reading those applications will notice that, and it will be harder for you to really get in. That's even separate just from scores and testing. So just like in dating, you want to make sure you get to know the medical schools because they're certainly going to be getting to know you. And you need to make sure that you're applying to medical schools where it seems like there's a fit. A second part of dating, whether people like to admit this or not, is people tend to have a type. So a lot of people date people, the same kind of person over and over again. Either people like really bubbly personalities, outgoing, go-getters. Other people like individuals who are more quiet. The same thing for medical schools. So medical schools have a type. And when I say that, they have certain qualifications that they're looking for. And if the person who's applying does not fit those qualifications, you're highly unlikely to get in. So if you're going to also look for medical schools, you not only need to know what the medical school's mission is, but you also need to know what the medical school is looking for. What are those GPA requirements that they're looking for? What's the MCAT requirement that they're looking for? At least know the ranges, as well as the types of students that they've accepted before. Because if you are way outside of the type of student they've accepted before, then that really doesn't look good for your chances of being accepted. But if you're within the type of student they've accepted before, then you feel like you may have a really good chance of getting in. So again, I use my analogy of, picking a medical school kind of like as if you were dating. You want to make sure you know about the medical school because the medical school certainly will know about you. But you also want to make sure that what the medical school is looking for in someone that matriculates there, that you actually meet those same qualifications. And that's what's nice about this AAMC database that we'll look at in a few minutes, is because it's a great comprehensive resource for you to kind of figure these two questions out and kind of get answers there. Some examples of that would be there's certain schools that have certain missions. So some schools are very underserved oriented, or they are focused more on community health or primary care. And if you know you want to be a specialist and not really interested in primary care, then it may not make sense for you to apply to that kind of school. For example, there's some schools in the Northwest that have a focus on Indian populations in terms of Native Americans, and certainly have a very underserved focus. And if in your pre-medical career, you really haven't spent much time in underserved areas and your application isn't geared towards that, then the school is less likely, regardless of your other scores, to admit you for acceptance. Also, similarly, there'll be some schools that are very research focused. And if you really haven't done much research in your undergraduate career, then it really doesn't make sense to apply to those schools because you really won't fit their mission. And that's why doing your homework is so important. So another example of that, some schools focus on global health, and if that's not your priority and you have no global health experience or inclination, then it may not make sense for you to apply to that medical school. So that's why it's important to do your homework really on the front end so that you kind of don't waste your time or waste your money and increase your chances of getting to med school. It's so competitive to get in. You don't want to really apply to places that you may not have a chance to get in anyway. You really want to save your resources and your energy for schools that you have a really good chance of getting accepted into. So another thing that I think we can focus on in this talk is in terms of having a good fit. So often pre-medical students are just focused on getting into medical school, which is important. Obviously, you want to get in, that's the goal, but you also want to make sure you're at a medical school that's right for you, that's going to fit for your personality, where you'll be happy at, where you have the financial resources to go, where you can have the supports to go. And that's why location can be important for some people, because it's not just about getting into the school. You want to be able to get out of the school and for that school to kind of fit with your career. And so you need to understand if there's certain tracks at different schools, how the learning style is at different schools. A lot of schools now have problem-based learning, or they're doing more small group sessions instead of didactic or tutorials. So if you're not someone who feels like you can learn well in a small group session and you need more traditional lecture styles, you need to make sure you understand that. So you don't start at an institution where you're not going to be set up to succeed. And that's why doing your homework on the front end is so important. I find often students just want to go to medical school, but they really haven't researched any of the medical schools that they're applying to. And so a big part of this live is to really encourage you to do your homework ahead of time, and it'll really serve you well. We talked about kind of understanding the characteristics that the schools are looking for, and that's going to take me to this part where I'm going to see if I can demo for you, if I can see how we can share. I don't know if I can show this to you, but I was hoping that we could look at the AAMC, the med school admissions requirement, has a very good database that students can use to kind of find out more about schools. And I think that would be really helpful for students to use. It's easily on the AAMC website. You can find it easily. I recommend that you go there. Again, it's called the MSAR, the med school admissions requirement. Take a look at that document. What's nice about it, it has a database of all of the medical schools in the country. You can search in the bar and you can find any medical school in that database. It will tell you about the school, kind of what the mission of the school is. It will actually give you different tests, parameters and ranges for those schools, as well as tell you the percentage of out-of-state, in-state acceptances. It will give you all that information that you need so that you can make sure that you have a really good chance of getting into that program. It doesn't just give you the median value for GPA and MCAT, which you'll see a lot on websites, but actually gives you the range so that you can know, even if you're not at the median level, if you're at least within the range for that medical school, which can be very valuable when applying. It also gives you information about cost, the representation of what types of activities people have done in that program. And so all of that can be very helpful when applying. So I really encourage people to take a look at that resource.